See my new jars? Super cute, right? They come with a glass lid. I know our signature are let me focus on here. I know our signature jars are the white and the matte black. We still have those available, but I love a good glass lid. I'm going to be honest, I actually bought these for me so I can make candles for my house. And then I had a customer say, "Oh, you should add those to your collection. I would love to get those." I'm always going to do what you want. Also, you guys know that I do the marbled candles. If you check out my Shopify store or my TikTok shop, I have the marbled candles. Now you can get it in a 3-wick. Every candle has to come with a warning label. This is California. Please don't ever walk away from a lit candle. Okay, back to our story. While we wick this one up, hold on one second. Okay, guys, I don't know if you want me to do a separate video to spell out the different doctor's appointments and the psychotropics. We can do that on another video. I want to get to the date in question, January 24th, 2023. I will say to this point, everything is coming from Patrick. This is Patrick's account of that day. This is his timeline. As of today, August 23rd, 2026, we have not heard from Lindsey Clancy. Defense is not calling her to the stand. I hope you guys are liking this angle. I know previous videos, we did it from our desk. This is just the best way I can make product and talk to you at the same time. If you guys would like more in-depth on the candle making process, I'm not going to give you my recipe. I'm just saying. Bible. But we can make them together, girl. Okay, now we are at the date of the incident. So at 8 a.m., Cora and Lindsey leave to take Cora to the pediatrician. We know that Lindsey and Cora made it to this doctor's appointment because they check in with the receptionist at 8:15. At 8:17, Patrick sends Lindsey a photo of a complete snowman outside. At this time, it is 25 to 30 degrees in Massachusetts, where they live. At 8:18, Lindsey sends him a pic of Cora in her gown at the doctor's appointment. At 8:30, Lindsey and Cora return home. 8:42, Patrick texts Lindsey. I will look and see what that text message consisted of, but they were both in the house at the same time. At 8:43, Lindsey responds to him. Patrick responds to her. Fast forward to 9:40 a.m. Lindsey logs into my chart, which is for her medical records. While I'm breaking down this timeline for you, I'm also going to incorporate the testimony from the digital forensic detective who testified about Lindsey's Apple Watch and her heart rate. Okay, guys, I had to take the microphone off because I feel like the sound is a little muffled. Just bear with me. This is going to be interview mode. There's no more activity that we can tell, at least that has not been disclosed in the trial yet. At 11:42, Lindsey sends a photo of a snowman to her mother and to Patrick. Now, I have a question because Patrick had already sent her a picture of the snowman. So are they taking a picture of the same snowman? Like, I'm a little confused on who actually built the snowman. The digital expert did testify that this photo had been edited. So it had been tampered with at some point. So either she turned off the live, for those of us who are iPhone users, when you take a photo, it also does a little video. So she more than likely turned that part off. At that time, at 11:42, Lindsey's heart rate was from 55 beats per minute to 123. So it did vary. She was outside doing a bunch of stuff with the kids, allegedly. At 4 p.m., Lindsey texts her mother. At 4:02, Lindsey searches kids' Miralax. At 4:13, she looks up the map between 3V and her home just to see the distance. Also sends a text message over to Patrick and says, "Hey, today's been crazy. Can we get takeout? Look at the 3V menu." At this time, her heart rate is 112 beats per minute. At 4:47, Lindsey places a call to the CVS manager to confirm that they have children's Miralax. We know this to be true because the manager testified during the trial, stating that a female called to make sure that they had children's Miralax. At 4:50, Lindsey's heart rate was 114 beats per minute. At 5:23, Lindsey's last heart rate is recorded on her Apple Watch, and it is 57 beats per minute. At 5:24, Patrick sends an email to his team from his Surface Pro located in the basement of the family's home. At 5:32, Patrick arrives at the CVS. We know for a fact this is because surveillance footage was introduced to trial and he walks in. At 5:33, Patrick calls Lindsey's phone. She does not answer. At the same time, Lindsey's Apple Watch is recording her climbing a flight of stairs. And then another flight of stairs. Both flights of stairs were completed by 5:33. At 5:34, Lindsey Clancy calls her husband back. Phone call lasts about 14 seconds. Phone log data shows they did not speak. But Patrick testified on the stand that he spoke to her, asked her if the generic brand was fine. She says that's fine, and they hung up. Between 5:34 and 5:35, these are the last movements tracked in Lindsey Clancy's cell phone. Between 5:36 and 5:37, Patrick leaves CVS. At 5:50, Lindsey and Patrick's neighbor received a call from his son who stated that the neighbor's wife is outside on the ground. At 5:54, Patrick Clancy arrives at 3V. At 5:55, Patrick Clancy leaves 3V, 10-minute drive home. It is important to note that at 6 p.m. in Duxbury, Massachusetts, it was 32 degrees Fahrenheit outside on the date of question. At 6:09 p.m., Patrick's phone is caught in cell phone radius of the house. He states he arrives home. He takes his boots off. First thing he does, set his stuff down on the kitchen table to take out the Miralax, which, sidebar, he had called Lindsey to ask if the generic brand was okay, and she stated it was, but the crime scene footage or photos show that he got the name brand. Patrick stated when he arrived home, it was eerily quiet. He called down to the basement. He didn't hear anything. According to his recollection, he couldn't remember if he closed or left the basement door open. He went into the children's rooms. He went into the bathroom thinking that they were getting baths. They weren't there. He calls Lindsey's cell phone. He does not hear the phone ring. He goes to his master bedroom. At this time, he states the bedroom door is locked. He said under testimony that the previous owners had created like this key system. So the key to his bedroom was taped behind Cora's bedroom door. So he went to Cora's bedroom door, retrieved the key from his bedroom, went and unlocked the door. The moment he opened the door, he stated that he saw blood spray everywhere, like it had been sprayed with a water hose. He saw that the window was open. He stated he could feel the cold air blowing in. He took about 1 or 2 steps inside the bedroom and immediately ran outside to the backyard. Under cross-examination, he stated he used the sliding glass door to exit the home. At 6:11, he called EMS. He says that it took a few minutes to call 911 because his phone was bouncing in and out of Wi-Fi. Have you guys ever called 911? Did Wi-Fi matter, or did you use your cellular data? I'm just asking for a friend. During this time, he's waiting for EMS to arrive. He is on the phone with 911. At this time, 911 dispatch testified that you could hear noises coming from somebody, but it sounded like they had something in their throat. According to Patrick's testimony, Lindsey confessed to attempting to kill herself, and the children were in the basement. Patrick stayed with Lindsey until EMS arrives. Sorry, guys, I'm referring to my handy dandy timesheet. EMS arrives at 6:16. The moment that the first responders arrive, Patrick is allowed to go past them, go down to the basement where he states he finds his children. He is still on the phone with 911 dispatch while first responders are in the house. They go to the backyard to treat Lindsey and her wounds. First responders testified that they remember seeing him in the basement because there's a window with Dawson. So, according to Patrick's testimony, he entered the basement, first went to the left, located Cora and Callan. They had exercise bands around their neck. He took them off, went looking for Dawson. Dawson was located in his office. According to him, Cora and Callan were face down. No testimony on how Dawson was found. The 911 tape was played for the juror and people in the court, but the judge is not allowing that to the public. And in all honesty, I agree with that. I don't think that 911 call should be released. I don't want to hear a man's heart breaking on the phone. I don't. And regardless on if you think he had anything to do with this or not, I just don't. I don't. According to the first responders' testimony, when they arrived to the basement, they were drawn to the basement by the yells of the father. A separate officer testified that he saw Patrick in the basement window with Dawson. But when they arrived, all the first responders down in the basement, the first thing they saw was Cora and Callan on the floor, exercise bands to the side, and the father was sitting on the couch. That's important to remember because in his testimony, he stated he was doing CPR on the children. And I believe he also noted that in the 911 call. They're not playing it for the public, so we don't know that. Lindsey arrived at the hospital at 7:35 p.m. At that time, her core body temperature was 82 degrees. EMS arrived at her house at 6:16. Baby Callan was found to have a faint heartbeat, so they did take him to the local hospital, and later he was transported to the children's hospital where he ultimately passed 3 days later. Okay, guys, somewhere along the way my microphone died and I just kept on recording and I got through the entire video, and when I went to go edit, no sound. No sound. Imagine my devastation. So here we go again. A side note, I'm just going to talk about me personally. If I came home and my house was eerily quiet and I'm used to the sound of toddlers and babies and my, let's say, husband handling all of that, and it's quiet, and I will probably go through the same motions. I would look in the kids' room, I would look in the bathroom, I would look in the basement, I would look in my room. And the moment I suspected my spouse outside on the ground, immediately my first mind would go to my children. Where are my children? I would not wait for first responders to get there, even if what he says is true. And Lindsey told him the children were in the basement. Why didn't you go check the basement? I'm not saying I believe he did it. I'm saying I understand why the conspiracy theorists are leading the narrative that way. A lot of it doesn't make sense, but then again, I am able to see both sides of the coin, and he may have genuinely been concerned for his wife. He probably did think this was her last moments and that she wasn't going to survive these injuries. There's a whole lot to debate and to speculate. I do want to know what you guys think. Please, flood the comments. Even if you change your mind, come back, flood the comments. I want to know what you think. This has been a topic of discussion at my job, in my household, in my friend group. We talk about it. There's just a whole lot to dissect. Let's get back to the facts of the case. During all of my investigation of this case, and yes, I've been paying attention to the social media buzz too, because it's always good to get other people's opinion. But I did do a deep public search on Patrick Clancy, and yes, he did remarry Rachel in April of 2026, but there's no record of them having a child. So I don't know if this is something that social media is running with. I mean, I wouldn't blame him if he wanted to keep that aspect of his life very private after, the public scrutiny. I will say that when I watched his testimony in detail, I was paying attention to his chest and the way he was breathing and his body language. He looked very uncomfortable. He looked like he did not want to be there. I know that the internet is reading into that as if, oh, I'm guilty, I don't want to be here. I read into that as it was a man reliving the worst day of his life and having to walk through each step of finding your children in that state and your wife in that state. I do feel like a lot of people lose that human element. I'll admit it. There's a lot of facts to this case that doesn't make sense, but I'm not here to say either way. Like, I'm not here to pass judgment or speculate. I am going to believe the defense is stating she did this. She allegedly is stating she did this, even though the evidence may point other ways. There is a whole lot to dissect when we start getting into the prosecution's witnesses. They had multiple first responders. I believe every first responder that was on the scene came in and testified, and they were asked, like, how was Lindsey when you found her? They said unresponsive. She was in and out of consciousness. They were asked if she was forming words, and none of them said no. She never said anything. If anything, it was like she was gurgling, struggling in and out of consciousness again. So it sounds like she only spoke to Patrick in those final moments. Let's get back to Lindsey's injuries. So Dr. Elizabeth Lapasada, I hope I'm saying her name right. Again, I want to apologize for anybody's name that I butchered in this video. It's not my strong suit. I'm sorry. I really am. Elizabeth Lapasada gave interesting testimony about the mechanics of Lindsey's fall. Lindsey reportedly suffered a Jefferson fracture. That is a fracture to the C1 vertebrae. Lapasada continued to say in her experience, people who experience that type of injury, it's from landing head first. So according to her theory, Lindsey landed head first out the window. A lot of doctors came in and testified that her injuries kind of support that. She had hypoxia. Her body temperature was 82 degrees. She had a whole lot of edema. Like, she was swollen everywhere. She went in cardiac arrest. They had to do, they put her on a vent. So she was intubated and in a medically induced coma. It's strange to me that the prosecution still to this day call her fall out the window like staged, that it was a fake S word. I don't want to say that because I know YouTube has censoring. Again, I want to say, if you or anybody you know is suffering from mental health issues or thoughts of harming yourself, please reach out to Lindsey. Was in the ICU. She had significant blood loss. She was severely hypothermic. Her body temperature was 82 degrees. She was on a ventilator. And Lindsey's injuries were so severe that she needed to be transferred to a trauma unit. So she had complex spinal fractures. She suffered a thoracic spinal injury, a Jefferson fracture, fractured ribs. She was intubated. She had coded on the table. For those of you who don't know what that means, her heart stopped and she had to be revived. My take on that would be, why would she throw herself out a window if she had planned to unalive her children? Why would you crush up pills? Why would you drink them? Why would you try to cut your neck? Why would you try to cut your wrists? One wrist, the injury was 3.5 centimeters deep, not length, but deep. There was so many different ways she tried to harm herself. How can that be for show? Like, how can that be there's so many questions about this case, and I think it has documented her struggles. And I think that the people around her didn't know how to help her. Or at the same time, anybody who's ever suffered from depression or anxiety or just self doubt, or you doubted yourself as a mom, you never want to share those thoughts with other people because it makes you look less than or feel less than. And I feel like as women, we take on more than we need to. And we have this persona of, oh no, I got it. Like, we could take care of it. We could do all of this. But at the same time, she was strong enough to voice, like, hey, I'm not okay. Hey, I am struggling. Hey, I am having these thoughts. And I just want to know what's wrong with me. At the end of the day, I want to be healthy, happy, and take care of my children. All accounts, all testimony, she was a great mother. Always wanted to be a mother. Nobody ever saw this coming. But isn't that kind of how it is? He, as in Patrick, testified that the day of this crime, she was the happiest she had ever been. Anybody who knows, anybody who has ever unalived themselves or had a mental breakdown, you do have these peaks and valleys where you're really high and you're really low. And right before you get really high, you get really, really low. And most people are their most happiest, healthiest version before they do something extreme. During her hospitalization, she continued to be seen by healthcare professionals for her mental assessment. She was also visited by a priest, the exact priest who came and baptized the children. One psychiatrist came in, and her attorney, Kevin Reddington, had to get a court order for this priest to go in and see her because from the moment she woke up, she was under arrest. They had her under police custody. There was armed policemen outside the door. The hospital had security staff. At one point, she was not chained, she was handcuffed to the hospital bed. I don't know what they thought she was going to get up and run, but I wasn't there. I get it. He allowed her to use his cell phone to call Patrick. And during this call, he found out that she heard voices that day. It was a male's voice who told her, this is it. Like, you got to do it now or you're going to lose your chance. I do want to know your guys' take on this story. Like, if you think the prosecution got it 100% right and that Lindsey made up this whole story and this whole voice and that she planned for months to unalive her children, and that this was a whole ruse, I would like to know your opinion on that. Please drop them in the comments. Like, I really want this to be a debate. I want us to talk about it. I'm going to read all of these comments. A part of me feels like it was a rush to judgment and they believed everything Patrick said without investigating. So when I was diving into this case, I saw that he was interviewed in the wee hours of January 25th while he was at the hospital with Callan. So Callan EMTs were able to find a faint heartbeat for him, so he was taken to the hospital, later airlifted over to Children's Hospital. I do understand that this trial is about her mental competency. It's not about guilt or innocence. Her attorney has admitted that she did this. By all accounts, she has admitted that she did this. So I feel like that's why the prosecution didn't put on a really strong case. I would have loved to know the contents of the children's stomachs. I do know that they went over toxicology report and there was absolutely no medication in the children's system, but I would have loved to hear their stomach contents because according to Patrick, when he left to go to 3V to pick up food, Dawson was sitting on the couch eating chicken nuggets and green beans. I would just like to know if that tidbit was true. I do have a few takeaways from this case that I want to discuss with you guys and I felt were interesting, and these are the questions that I have. So my questions are, they can't pinpoint the time that Lindsey jumped out the window. I think if you could pinpoint that time, maybe you could make it make sense a little more, but even then, it's like even the whole timeline is questionable, especially since the fact that he sent an email from his Surface Pro inside the house at 5:24. If you really do the math, that only puts him out of the house 30 minutes if that's the case. Like if he sent that email and then left and then got back to the house at 6:09, like that changes things. Like she literally had to be sprinting to do everything. And did she have that door barricaded because she had just jumped out the window when she heard him pull up? These are my questions. These are the things I think about. The fact that when Patrick testified, he stated it took a minute to call 911 because his phone was in and out of Wi-Fi. That's just weird. Like, are you only doing Wi-Fi calling? Do you live out where you have no cellular service? We know that that's not true because they testified that he was in the cell phone. He was pinging off the tower. So like that doesn't make sense. Also, this home had cameras. He had a Ring camera. There was Google Nest cameras. There was nanny cameras all throughout this house. And this day, none of these cameras were on or moving. And nobody has that footage. Nothing. Nobody finds that odd. I have cameras at my home too. And yeah, maybe one will die here and there. But I still got 4 other cameras that are up and operational. Like, who controlled these cameras? Who turned these cameras off? A bit suspicious. Or maybe he just turned off the Wi-Fi. You guys ever think about that? He turned the Wi-Fi off on the way home. I saw online somebody had posted when he was in the restaurant, he was on his cell phone, and the prosecutor asked him, like, what were you doing on your cell phone? He was like, I can't recall. On social media, they were saying he was watching the cameras while he was out, which that's diabolical. I think my biggest question regarding this whole case is why law enforcement would allow him to go down to the basement unescorted, unattended. If he said I had to find my children, why didn't they go look for the children? He was able to untie 3 bands before a single law enforcement officer made it to that basement. It's crazy.